I was sold on a Tuesday morning, somewhere between my father's third glass of whiskey and my mother's silence. Even now, I remember how the rain fell outside the windows, slow and steady, as if the sky itself was mourning the girl I was about to lose. They told me he was 90 years old. They told me he was dying. The words landed heavily in our small drawing room, crushing what little hope still lived there. My father sat in his chair with his shoulders slumped, no longer the proud man he once had been. His hands shook as he set the glass down. My mother stood near the cold fireplace, her hands folded tightly, her face pale but calm. We could not afford coal that winter. We could barely afford bread. "You will marry the Duke of Rendale," my father said. His voice held no strength anymore. "The papers are signed." I stood by the window and watched the rain trace thin lines down the glass. The Duke of Rendale. The name carried fear with it. No one had seen him for years. Some said illness had ruined his body. Others whispered that he had gone mad and lived hidden away on his estate far to the north. "He is dying, Vivian," my mother said softly. "He needs a wife to care for him. In return, our debts will be paid." I turned to face them. These were the people who had raised me, taught me to read, to dance, to believe life could be kind. My mother had once been admired by everyone. My father had once been respected. Now they were broken by bad choices and worse luck. "And if I say no?" I asked. My father finally looked at me. His eyes were empty. "Then we lose everything. We will be turned out with nothing. No one will help us." The room went quiet. I thought of the life I had imagined for myself. Of young men who once smiled at me before money disappeared and rumors spread. I thought of love and how quickly it fades when fortune does. "When is the wedding?" I asked. My mother's lips trembled. 3 weeks. A carriage will come for you. 3 weeks to say goodbye to my life. 3 weeks to prepare to marry a man old enough to be my great-grandfather. A man already waiting for death. "Very well," I said. My voice did not shake, even though my heart was breaking. "I will marry him." The carriage arrived on a gray morning exactly 3 weeks later. The sky was heavy, and the air felt cold and final. I hugged my mother, breathing in the familiar scent of lavender. She was thinner now. She had been skipping meals, I knew. "You are saving us," she whispered. I climbed into the carriage without looking back. If I had looked back, I would not have found the strength to leave. The journey north took 4 long days. The land slowly changed from green fields to wild, empty stretches of land. The air grew colder. Villages became rare. I spent most of the journey staring out the window, wondering why a dying duke would choose me, a baron's daughter with nothing left to give but obedience. On the 4th evening, the carriage stopped before Rendale Manor. It rose from the land like a stone giant, tall and cold, its windows glowing faintly with candlelight. The wind cut through my cloak as I stepped down. A woman waited at the door. She was old, with silver hair pulled back and sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Miss Hartley," she said, "I am the Dowager Duchess of Rendale. Welcome." Her words were polite, but her tone held no warmth. Inside, the manor was grand and silent. High ceilings, dark wood, old tapestries. Beauty everywhere, yet no life. "You will meet my grandson tomorrow," she said. Grandson, the word struck me hard. If she was his grandmother, then the Duke must be even older than 90. I said nothing and followed a maid to my rooms. The wedding was in 2 days. No one would tell me his name. No one spoke of him. The servants avoided the subject. The gowns arrived, rich and costly, dressing me like a doll for display. On the evening of the wedding, I walked alone to the chapel. There were no guests, no music, only candlelight and silence. The Dowager Duchess waited at the door. "Are you ready?" she asked. "Yes," I said, though I was not. Inside the chapel, a priest stood at the altar. Beside him stood my groom. He was hunched over, wrapped in dark cloth. A hood covered his head, and a black mask hid his face. He leaned heavily on a cane. His breathing sounded weak and rough. This was the man I would marry, 90 years old. Dying, I walked forward and stood beside him. The priest began the vows. My voice sounded distant even to me when I said, "I will." The priest turned to the Duke. There was a pause. Then something changed. The man beside me straightened. The cane fell to the floor. Strong hands reached up and tore away the mask. I forgot how to breathe. The face beneath was young. Shockingly young. Smooth skin. Dark hair. Sharp eyes the color of winter skies. He stood tall and powerful. No sign of illness or age. "My name is Nathaniel Vane," he said, his voice deep and steady. "I am 25 years old, and you are now my wife." The world spun around me. I had not married a dying old man. I had married a lie. The chapel felt smaller after the truth was revealed. The candles flickered, and the shadows on the stone walls seemed to move closer, as if they were listening. I stood beside Nathaniel Vane, my husband, my stranger, my deceiver, and I could not tell whether my hands were cold from fear or fury. "You lied to me," I said. My voice sounded calm, but my heart was racing. "Yes," he answered without apology, "I did." The priest stared at us as if he had stepped into a nightmare. The Dowager Duchess watched from her seat, her face unreadable, her posture rigid. This was no surprise to her. This had been planned. "Why?" I asked. "Why do this to me?" Nathaniel's eyes stayed on mine. "Because I needed a wife who came without questions, without ties to my past, someone no one would use against me." "A wife bought with lies," I said. "A wife who would be safe," he replied. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run. But then I thought of my mother's thin arms, my father's broken pride, the debts waiting to crush them if I walked away. "Finish the ceremony," I said to the priest. Nathaniel's eyes flickered with surprise. The priest swallowed and continued, his hands shaking. When it was done, Nathaniel did not kiss me. He simply took my hand and led me out of the chapel. That was how my marriage began. In silence, in anger, in a house full of secrets. The first weeks were lonely. Nathaniel slept in another wing of the house. He joined me at meals only when duty demanded it. When he spoke, his words were polite and careful, as if we were strangers forced to share space. I tried to understand him. I asked questions. He gave none. When I pressed, he turned cold. "There are things you do not need to know," he told me one evening as we stood in a long hallway lit by a single lamp. "I am your wife," I said. "I have a right to know who I married." "You married safety," he said. Nothing more. Those words cut deeper than any insult. The manor itself felt like a living thing. Doors stayed locked. Rooms remained unused. The servants spoke in low voices and avoided my eyes. At night, the wind howled across the land, and the house groaned as if it carried old pain in its walls. My maid, Ruth, was the only one who spoke freely with me. She was young, with red hair and kind eyes, and she noticed everything. "There is a man who comes at night," she whispered one morning while brushing my hair. "Always after dark, he meets the Duke in his study." "Who is he?" I asked. "I do not know. He never stays long. Secrets." Everywhere I turned, secrets. The Dowager Duchess watched me closely. She invited me to tea each afternoon, asked about my education, my childhood, my thoughts, but she never spoke of Nathaniel. "You are stronger than I expected," she said one day, setting down her cup. "You will need that." "For what?" I asked. She did not answer. The truth came to me by accident. I could not sleep one night. The house felt too quiet, too heavy. I wrapped a shawl around my shoulders and went to the library, hoping a book might calm my thoughts. As I passed Nathaniel's study, I heard raised voices. "You cannot hide forever," a man said sharply. "People are asking questions. I am protecting them," Nathaniel replied. "They think you killed him," the man said. "They think you murdered your cousin." My blood turned cold. "I did not kill Marcus," Nathaniel said. His voice cracked. "He attacked me." I defended myself. "Then come back and tell the truth." "And put everyone in danger," Nathaniel snapped. "I will not do that again." Again. Another death. Another secret. Footsteps moved toward the door. I stepped back into the shadows just as a man left the study. He was tall, serious, and gone before I could see his face clearly. I returned to my room with my heart pounding. Murder. A dead cousin. Fear strong enough to fake illness and age. The next morning I began asking careful questions. I searched the library. I wrote letters. Slowly, the story emerged. Marcus Hale was Nathaniel's cousin. They had been raised together. Marcus was charming and loved by society, but jealous of Nathaniel's title and wealth. And there had been a woman, Cecilia. She had been Nathaniel's first love, his intended bride. She died 10 years ago. The truth reached me through a letter hidden in an old book. The paper was yellowed, the ink faded. Marcus had threatened her. He had demanded her silence. She had begged Nathaniel to return and protect her. 3 days later, she was dead. I found Nathaniel in the garden that afternoon. The air was cold and the roses were bare. "I know about Cecilia," I said. He froze. "I know what Marcus did," I continued. "I know why you hide." For a long moment he said nothing. Then he looked at me, truly looked at me, and the pain in his eyes nearly broke my heart. "He killed her," Nathaniel said. "He pushed her and called it an accident. And when you confronted him," I said, "he tried to kill me." Nathaniel replied, "I survived." "He did not." "And his father blamed you." "Yes." Silence settled between us. "I married you to protect you," he said quietly. "If my enemies knew I lived, they would use you." "You should have trusted me," I said. He looked away. "Trust is dangerous." That night, something changed. He no longer avoided me. He spoke more, shared pieces of himself carefully, slowly. We were not in love, but we were no longer strangers. Winter came early. Snow covered the land. The house felt warmer with shared meals and quiet conversations. I learned Nathaniel loved music. He learned I loved poetry. We laughed sometimes and surprised ourselves. Then the letter arrived. Nathaniel read it and went pale. "He knows," he said. Marcus's father. "He knows I am alive." Fear filled the room. "He is coming." The man Nathaniel met at night arrived the next day. His name was Thomas Blackwood. He was a lawyer and Nathaniel's oldest friend. "We have evidence," Thomas said. "Enough to expose him." Nathaniel hesitated. "If I step into the light, people could get hurt." I took his hand. "You have been hiding for 10 years. It is time." He looked at me, fear and trust battling in his eyes. "All right," he said. "We face him." The morning Marcus's father arrived. The house felt charged with tension. He was a powerful man, confident, cruel, and certain of victory. "You cannot hide forever," he sneered. Nathaniel stood tall, not hiding anymore. The evidence was laid out. Letters, witnesses, proof of lies and threats. For the first time, I saw fear in the man's eyes. "This is not over," he said before leaving, but it was. The truth spread quickly. Society turned. The man who had hunted Nathaniel lost everything. Nathaniel was cleared of all charges. The house breathed again. One evening, as snow fell softly outside, Nathaniel found me in the library. "I never meant to hurt you," he said. "I know," I replied. "I do not deserve you," he said. "Probably not," I said and smiled. That night when he kissed me for the first time, it was gentle and uncertain, filled with hope and fear, and for the first time since the carriage took me away from my old life, I believed something good might grow from all this pain. Spring arrived quietly at Wrendale. The snow melted from the moors, and pale green life pushed through the dark earth. The house no longer felt like a tomb. Light filled the rooms. Doors that had stayed shut for years were opened. Curtains were pulled back. The silence that once pressed against my chest began to lift. Nathaniel did not return to society. Invitations came, but he declined them all. He said he had lived too long pretending to be someone else. He did not wish to pretend again. Instead, he chose peace. Our marriage changed slowly, the way real things often do. There was no sudden declaration of love, no grand gesture. There was simply time. Time spent talking. Time spent walking the grounds together. Time spent learning each other's habits and fears. We ate together every evening. Sometimes we talked for hours. Sometimes we sat in comfortable silence. I learned when he needed space. He learned when I needed honesty. One evening, as we sat by the fire, he looked at me for a long moment. "You could have hated me," he said. "You had every reason." "I did," I answered honestly. "For a time? And now?" he asked. "Now," I said. "I see the man beneath the lies." He nodded slowly, as if that truth mattered more than anything else. The Dowager Duchess watched us closely. One afternoon, as we took tea together, she spoke at last. "You saved him," she said. "No," I replied. "He saved himself." I simply stood beside him. She smiled then, a small, rare smile. That is often how it happens. Summer followed, warm and bright. My parents came to visit for the first time. My mother cried when she saw me, not from worry this time, but from relief. The debts were gone, the house was repaired. They were safe. "You look happy," she whispered. "I am," I said, surprised by how true it felt. Nathaniel treated them with kindness and respect. He spoke with my father late into the night. He walked the gardens with my mother, listening as she talked about flowers and seasons long past. Watching him with them, I felt something settle in my heart. I was falling in love with my husband. Not because he was a duke, not because he was handsome, but because he was gentle with pain, honest with fear, and brave enough to face the past. The words came out one evening without planning. "I love you," I said. He froze, as if afraid to move. "Say that again," he whispered. "I love you." He crossed the room in 2 steps and pulled me into his arms. He held me as if he had waited his whole life for permission. "I love you too," he said. "I have for longer than I dared admit." Our marriage became real that night. Not because of duty or papers, but because of choice. Autumn returned, richer and calmer than before. The manor filled with laughter. Friends came, not out of curiosity, but loyalty. Nathaniel's old friend Thomas visited often, bringing news that the man who had destroyed so many lives had been fully ruined. Justice had been done. One evening, I realized something had changed within me. A quiet knowing. A certainty. When the doctor confirmed it, I cried. I told Nathaniel in his study. He stared at me, stunned. "A child," he said. "Yes," I replied. "Our child." He laughed and cried at the same time. He lifted me into his arms and swore softly, promising the world to someone not yet born. The Dowager Duchess became someone entirely new. She smiled more. She fussed over me. She spoke of names and traditions and hopes she had not allowed herself for years. My mother came to stay as my time drew closer. She held my hand during long evenings and reminded me that strength often comes quietly. Our daughter was born on a spring night, as rain tapped gently against the windows. Nathaniel did not leave my side. When he held her for the first time, his hands trembled. "She is perfect," he said. We named her Eleanor. The house changed again. Softer, warmer, filled with the sounds of new life. Nathaniel sang to her at night, old songs, gentle and low. She calmed instantly in his arms. Years passed. The Dowager Duchess lived long enough to see Eleanor walk and laugh. She passed peacefully one winter night, content at last. My parents grew older but happier. They visited often. Eleanor adored them. Nathaniel became the man he was meant to be, no longer hiding, no longer haunted. He managed the estate with care and fairness. The land flourished under his attention, and our love deepened. Not dramatic, not perfect, but steady, real. One summer evening, years later, we returned to the chapel where it had all begun, the place where I had believed my life was ending. Instead, it had begun. "I was afraid that night," I said. "So was I," he answered. "And now?" I asked. "Now," he said, smiling, "I am grateful. I thought of the girl I had been, sold, afraid, certain her future held only duty and loss. She had not known she was strong. She had not known love could grow from lies and fear into something honest and lasting. I had been forced to marry a dying old man. Instead, I found a living one, and together we built a life neither of us had dared to hope for. That is how my story ends, not with tragedy, but with peace.